Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm just going to walk you through the week ending for the stock markets for September 19th. Here's my agenda. As you can see, I'm going to pull in some GDP and some quarterly numbers because they impact the overall market decisions. And I'll look at Australia, Asia, US, Europe, and Canada. Here's my bio. As you can see, I have a diverse background. I've been working with corporate finance areas for well over 35 years. Let's just look quickly here at this chart. This came from BMO. I use BMO quite a bit for my analysis in working with clients, business partners, etc. And you can see that GDP growth had a strong second quarter, and they're predicting that GDP will go under 2% into 2026, and that's significant because there is the threat of stagflation lingering around, and that's critical because we still are dealing with inflationary pressures, productivity, skill gap, wage costs, all that, hydro energy costs are all impacting inflation. This gives you a look at GDP. So what I did is from a trading economics site, I pulled down GDP from quarter to quarter. I then just did a rate change, percentage change. So as you're seeing is like Turkey had the greatest change, like their GDP grew by 50% from the first quarter, and you're looking at same with South Korea had a strong quarter as well. What's interesting here is countries that have slid, like Canada's is 50% down to where they were in the first quarter, and a lot of that has to do with the trading issues that are going on with the U.S. because Canada has so much dependency on the U.S. But what's kind of interesting, if you look at Australia, who's in here as well, they actually saw a 30% increase. So it's kind of interesting where Australia has a similar economy structure as Canada, which is dependent on the natural resource sector, where Australia has seen some growth, Canada saw a decline. This gives you a look at where the stock ended for the week. The stock actually had a 2.2% gain overall for the market for the ASX 200. I highlighted the three areas, which were the utilities, the information technology, and consumer discretionary, as those are the ones that seem to be had a decent week. What's interesting is the energy stock, and that had something to do with some issues going on with a few of them lithium stocks. It's also going on with LNG, Boss Energy this week. There were some situations happening with them. So it's very interesting to look at kind of what was happening in Australia this week. Here's a look at the Asia markets. And this gives you an idea. The Nikkei ended the week down. Same with the Nifty, which is India. It was down, but yet Australia was up. So it kind of gives you an idea that two of the five markets seen good increase. Then you're looking at some of the key companies here that actually have benefited this week. And the Ganfeng stock is lithium related, and there were some decisions in China made about expanding capacity at some lithium mines, and that's led to a ripple effect across Australia and Chile, where they have sizable reserves and plans to develop lithium reserves in those areas. This gives you an idea of European markets, and it looked like they've had a decline, with the only one seeing a bit of a positive uptick was the FTSE, which is in the United Kingdom. And it's interesting because Donald Trump just did a visit in London, and there are talk about more and more about trade decisions around what's happening with UK and the US. And then you can also see some of the stocks too as well. Continental is more of a tire company. You can see somewhere where some of the stocks are up and down as well. This gives you an idea on the US side of the stock market, and both the Dow Standard, S&P, and Nasdaq all ended the week on an upside, while the Russell Index was on a bit of a decline. And then you look at some of the key stocks. Well, Paramount had a big week because of the merger discussions. You see Newmont up there as well because there's been a lot of activity going on in the mining sector. Oracle continually is investing in their cloud and AI infrastructure, so that's critical. And then you look over here with Amgen, which is a biotech company. But what's interesting is Intel is down, But Intel made a major deal with Nvidia in terms of supporting development with some funding from Nvidia. So that's interesting. And then you look down with Walmart. Disney's on a little bit of decline because Disney's been feeling some heat about everything going on with the handling of Jimmy Kimmel, suspension of that show, and just the overall media seems to be under a bit of pressure. Chevron is down a bit as well. There's been some pressure on the oil stocks as well. So it looks very interesting in terms of what's happened with the U.S. market this week. This is the TSX. The TSX is heavily driven by resources, so there's been some conversations in the mergers in the oil and gas sector, and this gives you an idea that they ended the week on a high note.